person reaps what they sowed during this life. The last principle is that of the destiny, belief in the destiny. That everything that takes place was already known to God, was recorded. Though human beings have free will to choose and to do what they wish to do, and for which they will be held accountable, their actions and their choices were already known to God. This is a part of basic Islamic belief. Now, with regards to this principle of belief in the destiny, the goal behind it with regards to human beings is that it creates in them, those who believe in it, a sense of contentment, in the sense that when trials and tribulations befall them in this life, they are not driven to extremes of despair and despondency and suicide and these types of things. So they know that this was already known to God. God has permitted it to take place. And it is a part of the test of their life to be patient, to learn from it if there were mistakes which preceded it from themselves, which are known, to learn from it to correct themselves. If there were, or didn't appear to be any mistakes from themselves, but they found themselves in some difficulty, that ultimately, though what befalls them appears to be evil, a calamity, etc., a difficult time, that there is behind it good, that God knows best what is best for each individual in his or her life. And so the individual is required to be patient in the time of calamity. And at the same time, when good befalls them, when good comes to them, they are required, realizing this was already known to God, this is by God's permission, they are required to be thankful to God, not to go to the extremes of happiness which would lead them to forget God and their responsibility, but instead to thank Him, and to thank Him by sharing something of that good with others, not just by word of mouth, but by sharing what came to them, because they realized that ultimately it came from God. Stepping back to the last day, the goal behind it, in terms of the qualities or characteristics which it should develop within the believer, is a sense or consciousness of accountability. That whatever one does in this life, one will have to face. Not necessarily in the life around us, because we see people who seem to commit such acts of evil and seem to pass out of this life without any kind of recompense, that we believe that ultimately that person will be held to account. And this again removes from that individual something of the anguish or something of that state of helplessness that people feel when evil seems to go unpunished. So it helps to produce in an individual again a sense of contentment, a sense of peace in dealing with the world around him or her. In terms of the Prophet, the principle which comes out of this is recognition of the mercy of God to humankind, in that He didn't leave them on their own, but sent prophets along with books of revelation to to convey, to help them to apply the laws that He has revealed for them, in other words, to help them to find the right way in their daily life. The belief in the angels is geared, one, to recognizing the issue that these forces that exist in the world, which are not visible to us, for example, under normal circumstances, that these forces are not to be worshipped. They are agencies of God, not to be worshipped. And it is the belief that with every individual are two angels who record his or her deeds, their evil deeds and their good deeds. And that reminds the individual of that accounting. Of course, again, it is not belief in Islam that God doesn't know what the individual is doing, and that recording is not necessary for that record to be held or created, but that God chose to do it this way, and to inform us about the angels, the recording angels, as a means of helping the individual retain a consciousness of his or her day-to-day affairs, and that they are being accounted for. That he or she will have to answer, will have to face a record of what they have done in this life. And finally, back to the belief in the one God, that this belief involves realizing that everything which takes place in the universe is by the permission of God. That there is only one creator. There is only one creation. Though we may speak of different races, that there in fact is only one race, the human race. But whatever distinctions that we see amongst ourselves, physical, are not distinctions in species, we are one. Medical science has confirmed that to us in a way that peoples of the past perhaps may not have been able to grasp, in that we've come to know that when a person needs a blood transfusion, the one who may be able to save his life may belong to other so-called races, and those of his or her own so-called race may not be able to save their life. Had God willed, He could have had that those people who are from that same quote-unquote race have the same blood type. But this wasn't the will of God. The blood types have varied right across the lines of the so-called race groups, serving as a reminder to human beings that we are one creation. And there is only one creator. And as such, only that creator deserves our worship. If He is the only one who has created, if whatever takes place is by His permission, then there is no point in turning to any other person or any other being or etc. but God. And that belief, that faith, also produces in one who holds that belief sincerely a sense of peace, being at peace, knowing that whatever takes place in this life is in accordance with the will of God. So that summarizes what is referred to as the 5 pillars of Islam and the 6 pillars of Iman, or faith. The individual, after asking, and the Prophet's response, then asked him, what is ihsan, or righteousness? And he said that righteousness is to worship God